All right, this wasn't a problem from the book, but somebody requested a video on the derivatives of inverse trig functions. I think this is probably what was being asked for, because I'm sure you guys are really good at using the formulas, and if you're allowed to assume what the derivatives of the inverse trig functions are, then there's no problem really. But yeah, so for example, if we're thinking about the derivative of arcsin of x, maybe you already remember that you've already memorized that the derivative of arcsin of x is 1 over the square root of 1 minus x squared. But really the hardest thing about these derivatives of inverse trig functions is figuring out what they are if you don't know what they already are, or proving that this is the right derivative if you need to do that. So this isn't a problem that's in the book, but it's something I did in class, and I'm just going to give it to you again in video format so you can watch it again and again. And so let's prove that this is the correct derivative. Well, what we do is we think about sine of arcsine of x, and because sine and arcsine are inverse functions, this is just x, right? So arcsine of x is, well, the output of arcsine is an angle, and the angle it outputs is the angle where sine of that angle is equal to x. So sine of arcsine of x is equal to x. And then we look at this and we say, okay, we're going to take the derivative of both sides. And if we do that, we'll get, on the left-hand side, the derivative of sine of arcsine of x, and that should be equal to the derivative of x. So on this right-hand side, we just get 1. And on the left-hand side, we have to use the chain rule because we're composing arcsine and sine. Or in other words, sine is our outside main function, and we're inputting this function arcsine of x into sine. So that's the inside function, arcsine. So to use the chain rule, first we take the derivative of the outside function, that's sine. So the derivative of sine is cosine. And we still input into cosine arcsine of x. We don't change that inside function. But we do have to multiply by the derivative of that inside function, the one that we're sticking into sine. So we need to multiply by the derivative of arcsine. Okay, barely enough room there. And now we're just solving for the derivative of arcsine of x. So we'll divide both sides by cosine of arcsine of x. So I know that it looks maybe like cosine and arcsine of x are two different things, but that's one unit right there, cosine of arcsine of x. They go together. Arcsine of x is the input for cosine, so it's not that cosine is getting multiplied by arcsine or anything like that. That's one unit altogether, so we're going to divide by that one unit, and we'll get that the derivative of arcsine of x is equal to 1 over cosine of arcsine of x. Okay? Okay, great. So let's clear a little bit more room and try to make this a little bit prettier, a little bit more recognizable, and a lot easier to use. Okay. All right. So we're at this point. where we say we know that the derivative of arcsine of x is 1 over cosine of arcsine of x. And now the question is, what is cosine of arcsine of x? Can we make this look any nicer? Well, let's say that arcsine of x is equal to theta. Remember again that arcsine, all the inverse trig functions, their outputs are angles. So let's draw the triangle, and this angle will be theta. And saying that arcsine of x is equal to theta is the same, or is the inverse statement for sine theta equals x. So these are kind of equivalent since arcsine and sine are inverse functions. So sine of this angle is supposed to be x, so we can make this side of the triangle x and the hypotenuse 1. And then we find this third side using the Pythagorean theorem, and we get that it's the square root of 1 minus x squared. So cosine of theta is equal to the square root of 1 minus x squared. And if we put this together with what we already had, oh, well, I guess I should also say, well, cosine of theta is also cosine of arcsine of x, right? Because we had that arcsine of x was equal to theta. So now, okay, now we can put it together with what we already had. So we get the derivative of arcsine of x is equal to 1 over the square root of 1 minus x squared.